Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings Here in Mendham and such. That's me. So anyway, a couple of videos this week. I posted them during the middle of the week, so maybe you already saw them. Maybe. Slight chance. Anyway, that anybody pays attention, really. But regardless, so it's kind of an unpleasant task of having to disagree within the community of people who are, what's the word they use for when you're, you're slated for something, described, is a better word for it, anyway, as antinatalist or effilist. And so, as you may have noticed, if you've been around this subject for a while, is there's a lot of different people calling themselves the same thing, but they're doing it for very different reasons. And they have very different end plans and all of that kind of stuff, and have a whole different way of describing the problem and describing solutions. And so it's, like everything, it's messy because it involves human beings. And, I mean, I would argue that, logically, there's only certain paths that are possible for intelligence to go. And so obviously there has to be something ignorant or stupid or wrong in all of this misdirection. Even if it was myself who was guilty of such a thing. But I doubt it. Anyway, and so it's just really, it's not fun to, have to make these distinctions and make it clear that, this is what I mean, by the term. And I suppose to some extent I would think the term would be simple enough, effilist, and doesn't really need too much description in terms of it's just this idea of being against the general thing called a living thing. But obviously that statement is in itself complicated by the fact that our language is really broken, because we call a paramecium a living thing, and then we call human beings that are made out of essentially parameciums. They're made out of single-celled organisms. And, a lot of them are technically very complex cells, and little living beings on their own. Just provide them a plasma to live in, and they can survive a very long time. You can keep human stuff alive a very long time, so it's obviously not dependent on being part of a organism that has a brain and all this other crap. It's just dependent on being in a, salt water, back in the ocean, almost that simple. So yeah, multicellular organism is functioning on a whole different level than a single living cell. And we don't have two different words for that, so it leads to some confusion. So when I say anti-life, I'm really not talking about anything that squirms or wiggles as a hunk of chemistry. I'm talking about something that has a brain and is doing that ouch thing. So it has one specific kind of cell, you could argue, the neuron, which is, as far as can be told, the only cell capable of producing brains, making something sentient. And there's no other physical structure or mechanics that creates anything like a brain. Okay. And certainly not a sentient brain. Anyway, so enough of the word stuff. So words get in the way, that's for sure. The imprecision of our language and all of that, and that's unfortunate. But again, this probably goes deeper than just misunderstanding words. I guess if I was to paraphrase it, it's just over this idea that somehow we're not going to call bad people, like we should have to be polite to living with, what could be considered terrorists or bad people or nasty things or Nazis, for example. And it's a legitimate reality that the people who commit these acts are, perhaps ignorant, but it's a kind of ignorance that's almost unacceptable. If you're injecting mice or rats or some other brain-enabled mammal with horrid diseases and cancers and all kinds of, terrible death, you're not a nice person. Just a fact. And if you're running some concentration camp that has a bunch of sentient organisms in it, locked in pens, sitting in their own filth, just producing dollar bills for you in terms of little piglets to squish to death, you're not a nice person. You're not, you're a piece of suck, And these people are sort of afraid to say that. I think that's part of this. They don't want to really draw the line that's inevitably got to be drawn, and the war that's inevitably got to be fought. Either you're going to liberate animals, or you're not. And one of the worst offenders happens to be the natural system, which exploits, rapes, destroys, harms, commits indignities against sentient organism in gratuitous and grotesque volume, and it needs to be outlawed. It needs to be put in jail. It needs to be stopped from running its little manguless genetic experiments, and inevitably that has to be done. And none of these certain ones of these people think there's some other way to get to the promised land than to have to fight your way there. And I don't think you're going to get there any other way than to fight your way there. But whatever. So that's part of it, I guess. So part of it's the definition, part of it's the recognition that it is, this isn't a disagreement between good people. It's a disagreement between belligerent assholes, frankly. It's, this excuse making only goes so far. Oh, I didn't know animals feel. How did you miss it? It's on their face. It's, in your face. I had a feral cat stare at me through the window last night. It's cold and nasty out there. They got such a brutal life. And I'm sitting there staring at him for 15 seconds or so before he got, what the fuck is going on? And, took off. And, breaks your heart. Breaks my heart. Gives you very little incentive to take another breath because you just realize how brutally hard existence is on most of the things existing. And this isn't some kind of pleasure cruise, where we're complaining that the engines are making too much noise. There's too many people in the pool. This isn't some trivial, minor issue. Torture is a really nasty thing. I know I don't want any of it. I know I don't want to cause any of it. I know I don't want to have anything to do with it, frankly. It's not part of any game I want to play. And so there's lots of arguments that basically point that out, in the sense that I'd rather not be imposed upon. I don't want to have to keep coming back here and saying, gee, you people suck. Gee, you people suck. I don't want to, I don't want to be doing that forever. The whole thing is a disgusting imposition. I'm supposed to come back here and be as dumb as you. Oh, shit. Yeah, maybe I would, but I'm just saying that's a pretty big cruelty to commit against somebody right there. It's a pretty big rape, of decency. So all of it really has to do with these imposition arguments and making different arguments explaining how you really are just an egregious imposer okay, if you're pro-life. And you're basically just saying you're worth it in some way. You're worth the suffering being caused, and that exists as part of the game. Because clearly nobody ever does anything to fix anything, and you know it. You're all too selfish to actually, build a nest before you lay eggs. And your eggs are just insurance policies. Insurance against your loneliness or your lack of anything better to do with your life, than oblige your children to show up now and then and say, I love you, or whatever it is you're after. I fear that child producers are after more than just that, that it is some kind of perversion going on there. Because there's really nothing to be all that passionate about. You don't have to spend much time babysitting a kid to know, gee, this is a hell of a responsibility, especially a young kid, okay? One of those toddler type things, because there's just so many ways those things can fuck themselves up. And to describe that as fun, it would be idiotic. Unless you think, you like watching train wrecks, because they're basically wobbling train wrecks, just looking for an excuse to fall off the tracks. I mean, you can see that, and it's generally speaking, this whole road through your adolescence is just so messy. Not too many people get through their adolescence without having some sort of damage to their, their at least the mental representation of their identity. And some of those scars are, very, very deep. And they spend the rest of their lives pouring alcohol on them or some other drug. And, there's just so many traps and bad and sad stories. And even the good stories, even the people who have some sort of Mr. Rogers, whatever, wake up every day and do your little song and dance and pretend it's all worth it somehow. They all get killed too. So it's just tragic and sad and pathetic that people keep shoving this crap as if it is the greatest invention in the history of mankind, and it's just another poor man's poison. So placebo, it's worse than that, obviously. It'd be harmless if this was just some delusion people had and it made them happy and that was the end of it. But obviously, what they're deluded into thinking is purposeful doesn't have an end to it. And that's the part that needs to be fixed by people with better minds and more honesty and integrity. And you don't have to be that, again, how smart do you have to be to look at that thing and say, yeah, I get it, it feels. It has good days and bad days. It has good hours and bad hours. Quit pretending, the nature's made out of something else than, more disabled versions of ourselves. All right. I mean, more physically able, more mentally disabled, let's say, or something. Yes, they can't add very good, and their language skills are pitiful. But in every other way, they're living just as real a life of jeopardy as we are. All right, so back to the theme here. So Amanda, who so much a part of my adventures here on the internet, and Mati Hari, okay, are they have their they're it's kind of a vaudevillian act, but anyway, and I just have to make a distinction and say, yeah, this really isn't anything I envisioned as a way of enhancing or promoting awareness or selling, the idea that life is problematic and reasonable people have to fix it. They can't just say, well, I'll not rape, and that's as far as I'll go. I won't place any laws against rape, that kind of nonsense. That, no, we're all going to have to do whatever it takes, and some of it's not going to be any fun. Not that any of it's going to be any fun. Some of it's going to be bad, and some of it's going to be worse. But there really aren't any other viable options of let's have fun. That's really not going to be part of it. So anyway, probably, I don't know. It's very difficult to have to, argue with, people you generally don't think you should have to argue with. But anyway, it's the way it turned out. So leave us play some of this and such. That's all fine, but I can't, what's coming out of that in terms of a statement about this subject of helping people understand what it means to be a living thing on Earth. Right, so the context really is understanding evolution, understanding that the mechanism is unintelligent design, that has no capacity to understand that it's wasting too much suffering, that the cost of this creation is way too high, and that we can even know further that these creations can't do anything. It's not that dying stops us from being more perfect in some way. Certainly, you could paint more paintings, but you're really not going to do anything. All of that, you're just going to do these little things like win a gold medal. Oh, okay, you could win more gold medals if you could live longer. You're not gonna. We can't even contrive for ourselves as civilizations. We can't even contrive sensible spectator sport, right? It's all nonsense sport. Jumping highest, running fastest, tie your shoes the fastest. I don't know. I mean, they're all nonsense, silly things to be good at. So we have absolutely no capacity to even understand what a good is. It's so hard to find some purpose for us to fulfill other than getting our share of, soft things to rub against. And that's about it. There's nothing else going on here. And that's a real pathetic part. So in some ways this goes as an illustration. So I shouldn't be too distressed by this circumstance just because me and the modern mystic have this substantial inability to communicate in any kind of civil way. And what are we disagreeing about? Well, we're disagreeing about the fact that he thinks life is futile, and that's as far as he cares to think. It doesn't do anything, so why bother making it? It doesn't do anything. And obviously I'm saying, no, you get rid of it because it sucks, not because it's not doing anything. Okay, the fact that it's not doing anything is, that's entertaining. That's totally failing to accomplish anything in the universe, so to speak. It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't function. It doesn't really enhance the universe, its existence, just like the absent Martians aren't degrading the universe by not existing. Nobody sheds tears. Okay, that's how bad this act is when you get rid of one of them, nobody sheds any tears. And get rid of us the same as not creating in the first place. And obviously, yes, I think it is the torture that is the problem, and it's just kind of funny that we agree substantially He just thinks it's the absence of the positive, and I think it's the presence of the negative, which is pretty funny. So anyway, I mean, it's pretty ironic. Funny in the ironic way. Sort of run away from the implications of his own theory, which are eventually you have to do some stuff that isn't pleasant to clean the whole system. I mean, there's no... So yeah, so I was talking about Benatar there, but it's that generally speaking, this is something people don't want to, the red button kind of stuff. The idea that, yeah, there's, eventually, it comes down to either you control what everybody thinks, or you have to control what people do. And so clearly we control lots of people, lots of behavior we've put on the you can't do that list. So there's a whole bunch of laws about what you can do. You can't, rape your kids and do all kinds of different things because we said it's obviously stupid and wrong. And the fact is, eventually that list will get a little longer, and, running concentration camps for animals will be on the list, and injecting animals with torment and torture should be on the list, and all this other stuff will be on the list. And, it's not going to be acceptable human behavior. Frankly. I mean, it's just a fact that the birth rate among intelligent people is below sustaining existence, that you will go extinct. So it seems a big missing ingredient in most of the other conversations about antinatalism is this idea that they don't seem to acknowledge this at all, that the only thing you have to do is there's this percentage of people who are the ones out of control that are creating all of the excess population, and they can be harnessed in by some simple rewards and punishments. Reward them for not having kids. If that's what it comes down to, let's pay people not to have kids instead of subsidizing them having kids. So get rid of the subsidies and actually pay them not to. Reward them for not getting pregnant until they're 18, for example. Make a huge difference. But they're not suggesting anything like that. So they're afraid of going to war, and they don't even want to go to the legislature. They don't want to do anything to draw a distinction between themselves and the nasty perpetrators of cancer. That's not the good we're talking about here. All right, you can't use a good that's the absence of a bad. That's taking a bad away. So that was just, I was just going, they were also attacking Benatar's asymmetry argument, which is a good argument. It's just that, people have to think a little bit to get it. That the absence of a good isn't a bad, and it isn't. Okay, if I don't get a present today, it wasn't a bad. If I don't, a ton of things that could happen. It's not bad that I can get those free things to happen. It doesn't put me in jail. It's not making a negative condition, not having something that you weren't expecting or that you don't need. But certainly, not preventing a bad is a good, and that's the asymmetry. There's a huge plus value to eliminating bads, and there's a very little minus value to taking away goods that aren't morphine, goods that aren't penicillin, goods that aren't fixing a bad. It's a logical consequence of accepting evolution and recognizing that. So that's a really important one for me. Is the recognition that we are just bugs. We really haven't evolved in any substantially interesting ways, in the sense that we're still behaving like bugs. We're still nepotistic, still controlled by silly passions, chemistry, knee jerks, penis jerks, that kind of stuff. Still, we haven't really grown up as intelligences. The memes are still very crude and fucktarded. Most of the world still is praying to fairies in the sky. Very pathetic, frankly. And animals are waiting for us to grow up and save them from their ignorance. We're waiting for somebody to become on this planet smart enough to drive the planet, so to speak. There's no God. That obviously that's unintelligent design then, and so then somebody intelligent has to show up. That's the obligation. If it's an unintelligent machine, then something needs to jump on board and apply intelligence to the machine. Is risk. Imposing risk. So it's my argument from my imposition argument that I've been making for 20 years. That's the part that should get to you, because imposing is really ugly. It's a difficult thing to do. Right, so, and I've explained that on both sides, right? The jeopardy side and the controlling somebody else's destiny, doing the right thing. Very hard to do, very hard to take responsibility for engineering somebody else's fate. If you made them shoes and, there was a fault in the shoe and they tripped and, fell into traffic and ended up paralyzed for the rest of their lives. I mean, all this stuff is a real, if you think about it, it's daunting to think about what it means to interfere in other people's lives, and we have to do it every day. You say hello to somebody and you really don't know whether I just distract him. Would he just now thought of some brilliant thing, but I just distract him and talked about how his lawn looks really great? So instead of thinking the great thing, he ended up talking about his fucking lawn. I mean, it's all these ways we interfere, and none of it feels good to me. None of it feels right, or, gee, that's the role I want to play, is blindly interfering in other people's lives. No, I don't want to do that blindly. And if that's the only choice, then there's no choice to be had. My thought experiments are great. Your thought experiments suck. I mean, just... sorry, too obnoxious. So that's sort of what this argument comes down to. And yeah, I think all of these old arguments were good arguments. These arguments of comparing it to drunk driving, or comparing it to a roller coaster, or comparing it to a tightrope, or comparing it to, all these different ways of metaphoring, as the background images kind of show in some of this conversation. Ways of demonstrating just what an asshole you're being if you're pro-life. How cruel and nasty and horrible and disgusting you are as a being on this planet. What a frickin' blight to decency you are. I think all of those arguments are very good at illustrating, putting a mirror in front of people and saying, just look at how fucking ugly your behavior is. You're all horny for this. Why? What is it? What really is motivating you that you think you should impose torture on something else? How dare you? And they all kind of run away from that. Lapiro types who say, I didn't do it, my sperm did it. I didn't choose to have kids. They did. I mean, it's so fucking stupid. So irresponsible. Fuck. So, oh, you're going to pretend to be that stupid, are you? You're really going to pretend to be that fucking stupid? For this cause, you're going to pretend to be a flat earther, huh? I mean, it's that bad. They're gambling with somebody else's money, and that's really fucktarded. It's fucktard enough to be gambling with your own welfare. It's really fucktarded to be doing it with somebody else's. Yes, nasty business. Take a pause. So this was apparently the rolling dice analogy. So procreation is like rolling dice, and that dice have really bad things on them. So it has some good things, but it has some not bad things. See, that's the problem. You can't really describe what these good things are because the good things aren't necessarily good things. Oh, he'll become a billionaire. Well, how do you make your billionaire? Oh, that's right. You have to exploit a bunch of employees and steal the value of their work. Usually that's the only way to do it. You know, there's no real reward, okay, for a real good. Doesn't happen that way. You're just exploiting people. That's how you get rich. All right, so the goods aren't even good. That's the point. All right, so the term autonomy, can't really say that for some reason. But anyway, this idea that something earns some sort of right to define their own destiny, and whether you can ever even use such terminology in a context of a multiplayer game. Again, the idea that we should be free to be assholes is absolute nonsense. And so I would argue that no, I mean, a rational, democracy attempts to find out or figure out what is asshole and stop it from happening. Do whatever it can to discourage it at minimum. And, it's very hard to defend the bad act. We can have arguments about how much the bad act should be punished, but there shouldn't really be an argument about the fact that it should be punished, not rewarded. So that's part of this conversation, I think, is argument, is that somehow these analogies don't appreciate that people have some sort of right to be jerks or something like that. Anyway, so they're not dismissing the arguments entirely. They're just saying things like it's not their cup of tea or something. That these rhetorical devices of presenting people with this image of them as a rapist, dressing them up in the right garb and talking about how it's just like you just being a thief and a crook, and you're stealing from somebody else to have what you want, and isn't that evil? It's that kind of thing. Well, frankly, they just don't think it's effective, but they're not replacing it with anything I can comprehend. So I'd like to be able to tell you how they're, this argument is about some argument about some potential improvement in the argument, but I can't find it, so I can't comprehend it. So as much as I've attempted to discern what it is that they're offering as a replacement for these very good arguments, I can't figure out what it is.
Offspring lightly.
Yes, of course. So yes, how can you do it any other way? You would have to take, if you look at the dice and see the skull and crossbones, you should be done right there. You say, okay, that's it. I mean, brain cancer, whatever. You see, brain cancer? That's brain cancer? Oh, fuck it, no, I'm not touching these dice. Or you would, yeah. I mean, and again, you wouldn't want somebody else playing with dice that had things on it based on their sensibilities, what they think is important, what they think is good or bad. That's how people end up married to, Methuselah. You don't do that to other people. You don't subject them. So it's one thing, again, if people want to play this, and I'd call it a phony dice rolling game, where they're really not looking at the real dice, and they're always looking at them from some sort of impoverished condition, right? I mean, you can find somebody who'll do almost anything for $1 million, right? So if I make a show where for $1 million you throw a brick 10 feet in the air and have it land on your head, and see if you can actually kill yourself or get brain damaged or survive and get your money, there'll be some asshole to show up. Now, that mean we should have the show because somebody's dumb enough to do it? No, you don't have the show. That's the definition of civilization, is you don't let assholes do whatever the fuck they think is clever or smart. And you don't let dumbasses have kids they can't afford, they have no capacity to raise, they can't even get past their own alcoholism or some other bullshit. They have all kinds of liabilities. There's nothing here to represent anything like a good idea. So in a sense, you don't let humans lay eggs until they build a nest. Give us some reason to think you have a possibility of taking care of this business. So anyway, that kind of simple stuff. So you're just trying to paint this picture of asshole, and everybody's going to be compelled by subtly different images. But I'm saying, generally speaking, anybody worth talking to understands you don't enjoy watching a video of a kid getting raped and slowly murdered and enjoy it. And you don't watch human beings recklessly playing with the fate of other sentient beings and enjoy it. That's sick.
Thingy 2, drunk driving.
So she called these things thingies, these analogies. So this is an analogy from recklessness is how I would describe it. So there's lots of ways to be a reckless procreator. And it obviously, I think the vast majority of people would be perfectly comfortable with some sort of legislation forcing, say, parents to take responsibility for their teenagers and pay a penalty, pay a price to civilization if their daughters end up pregnant at 15 or something. They've got to do better. Okay, that's just should be the rule. And if you can't do better, you should, in some way or other, appropriately wear your scarlet letter as a menace to civilization. There should be some punishments, okay, non-rewards at minimum for being the cause of social blight. So, I mean, thingy. Just yes, just annoying. I mean, I don't, well, whatever. Thing for the right reason, and that's the argument. Let's all do the right thing for all the right reasons. Yeah, so there's lots of people doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. There's people who are vegetarian because it's better for their own health. There's people who do lots of good things in the world for reasons that just have to do with their own ego or, creating a facade of them being a nice person or all this other crap. But ideally, yeah, it'd be great if we all did the right thing for the right reasons. And that should be some kind of institutionalized goal that, this should be like one of those Smokey the Bear kind of things, let's try to be good people, not bad people. Okay? Duh. I mean, not a single player game. I can get that. Yeah, I have a brain. They have brains. All brains are the same pretty much. They just have different ideas in them. All same calculator, different calculations. Who cares? Okay. Right. Harming one or harming another doesn't harm is the problem. Doesn't matter whether Adolf Hitler has the headache or I have the headache. It doesn't make any difference. Now, clearly, when it comes to punishments, obviously we have to give punishments to people who have done bad things. Punishment ain't going to work. I mean, if you punish random people, that's not going to send a message to the bad guys not to be bad guys. And it'd be good that we didn't have to punish somebody. We didn't have to threaten people, that they'd automatically not have any chance of raping and killing kids. I mean, it'd be nice that every human being is just a 0 chance that that's what they're going to do, because, yeah, that's crazy bullshit. Even if I had a desire to do it, I ain't doing it. That's fucking so goddamn stupid. But the stupid thing is hard to get past. All the people who are angry about something and they go out and just kill random people, and you're just like, what do you think that teaches anybody? You think that teaches somebody something? Oh, they're going to learn a lesson? No, they're just going to learn you're an asshole. masses. So this shouldn't even be a conversation. Of course, we should be dissing their intelligence and their thoughtfulness, because of course it's just a clear correlation between how fucking stupid you are and how many kids you'll have. So again, this is something that's really got to be emphasized, is that we've already made human beings extinct by making human beings civilized. So if they weren't being polluted, okay, by the morons, this wouldn't be an argument, and the only subject would be is what do we do about the poor fucking dumb animals? And yeah, you have to eventually say, okay, well, there's got to be a point where we anesthetize, the sick dog, so to speak, and we just get it done. Sad, unpleasant, but necessary. Much better than, the alternative, which is perpetuating torture. Matters. Obviously, in criminal justice, I would argue what you're thinking matters. Obviously, if you're trying to murder somebody and you fail, that should be the same crime as succeeding. Okay, your failure shouldn't get you a reward. Right, so there's already so many examples of how our culture has just doesn't have any understanding of real tragedy at all. So many people, people die in a plane crash. It's this quick in most cases, and it's over. Not the worst way to die, blah, blah, blah. You go to all this stuff, and to some, it's just the most tragic possible thing that could happen to somebody. And it's really not the most tragic, horrible thing that could happen. And, somebody getting diagnosed with a, terminal brain tumor, a lot more tragic. But there's no monuments to that. A horrible brain tumor monument. You can't go to, New York or someplace and go to the horrible brain tumor memorial.
One is a victory, of course. But then the philosopher in me intervenes and says, yeah, well, fine, but what else will they do at the request of the seven-headed cannelloni monster?
So he was just, you're saying, okay, he's saying our analogies are bad, and then he brings up a version of the spaghetti monster, right? Because that's a way of mocking religion and pointing out to people, look, this is how ridiculous you're being. You're praying to a figment of imagination, and it could be anything, any kind of bizarre, perverse, multi-penis being, in space. It's just ridiculous. If I made up something, and called it my God, are you going to respect it? And there's nothing else about your theory that needs respecting. It has zero evidence. It doesn't make any logical sense. What the fuck is a Holy Ghost? The whole thing is, I have died for your sins, and nothing changes. Absolutely nothing. The world is just as corrupt, just as shitty, just as fuck, and somehow it's supposed to be reborn. Well, what got reborn? Your invisible ticket to heaven. Yeah. I mean, so it's just so it's just ironic that he's using a bastardization of an analogy for the purpose of making something ridiculous, and he's doing exactly the same thing, and somehow he's saying basically, well, this is the Mahdi version, it's so much better than anybody else's, and that's all it sounds like. It just sounds like ego trip bullshit. So thingy 3. So Russian roulette. I don't think I brought that up too often. I brought up straws. Putting straws in kids' pockets. So you're given a handful of straws, some very, very short, and some very long, and it's you're basically saying, look, I'm comfortable with the idea that I'm just going to stick them in a kid's. So I just line up 100 healthy kids, and I decide who gets brain cancer. Who becomes an alcoholic, who becomes a drug addict, blah, blah, blah. Who, they watch their wife die of cancer when they're 25. Yeah, fuck you. Yeah, what idiot wants that job? Not me, because I'm decent and sensitive. All right, so the Russian roulette argument will be, they'll relate this to Benatar. He's used this argument. I've certainly brought it up, I think. I might have said the words, actually. But I usually use the argument from drawing straws. See, I predicted that. Yeah, anyway, because I don't, frankly, need to. And just make the argument from the facts, please. Okay, it's a bug planet, and we're going to torture things so we can sing and dance. Yeah, so I don't know what we call that argument, but that's partly the feudal argument. You know, there's just nothing else to do but us indulging rubby games or something, you know, and saying, yeah, it's worth it. It's worth torturing stuff so we can rub each other's little parts and go, ooh, oh yeah, that was good, ooh. And the only way we do that oohing part, right, is because we have some pent-up tension and desire that's unmet. And so it's all, you know, to undo a negative state we should never been in the first place. A needful state that's unnecessary. Unnecessary need. The unneeded need. These are arguments that go back 1,000 years.
Such risks for one's offspring is morally problematic.
It's so he's using the word morality, which again I would just say they should just stay away from the word morality and just say it's ethically problematic, and in a decisive almost way where there's no way to resolve the fact that you're assigning this punishment. Yeah, and that's what we do. So again, if you had to actually, you know, if you had to actually kill your food, okay, most people couldn't do it. They couldn't go, you know, hacking the poor critter to pieces, look in its eyes and say, somehow I'm going to do this to you because I need to eat a hamburger. And, you know, most people couldn't do it. So they're so duplicitous in their defense of what they're advocating. So if you're a pro-lifer and you want humanity to go on and on, then again, you're the one imposing the torture that will be experienced. It's on, you know, your hands, so to speak. This is your blood footprint. And I don't know how a decent person says, I'll accept that. Because I think us singing and dancing people are worth it. We're so fucking cool, us singing and dancing, that we're worth torturing things for. Obviously, I'm booing, you know, as that statement's being made. Going to be worth it, and I could put if I could put their death, you know, at 10 years old, they could die, you know, then maybe they'd get it. So, you know, some people do die more than once. So some people do that, and they still pursue, you know, they endeavor to keep pushing the drugs, you know, pushing the bullshit, pushing the fable, you know, because they're fanatics. They're, you know, like religious kooks. They have some notion of purpose. They don't have any kind of intellectually well-reasoned idea of purpose. And that's all they're doing. And so they're, in a sense, defending their own life by defending life in general. And, you know, that's pathetically not very clever. His argument, of course. Oh, God, the ego.
May show in his appeal to a risk of unspeakable suffering, but the odds are still wrong.
So he's complaining about odds. So if you make the odds the right number, so apparently for these people there's a right number. So if it was 10 lion cubs, you know, 9 out of 10 survived, okay, to maturation, and only 1 in 10 had to be horribly killed, they'd go for it maybe. And we know that the real nature is the other way around. It's 5 out of 10. I mean, 6 out of 7, let's just say, will be horribly killed before they ever see the first birthday. And, for humans, we've made that a lot better. Okay, you can survive. But how hard is the survival? And let's understand there's just an awful lot of hard survival. And it doesn't involve, you don't have to get a disease and you don't have to get a whole bunch of other stuff. All you have to do is be awkward and, unappreciated by the in crowd and all kinds of other stuff to have an awful lot of discomfort in facing another day. So it's just bullshit to bitch about numbers. It's not about numbers. It's about the extent of the torture and the fact that it's spread so thick and so deep.
Odds are of ill favor.
Yes, that is a big part of my point. And as you have seen, also a big...
I don't know. So he's saying that the equation somehow changes if it's 3-to-1 bullets to empty cartridges, or 6-to-1, or so somehow he knows what that right amount. So there's some magic number for him that's okay. So if he's playing Russian roulette and it's 9 empty chambers and only 1 bullet, well, then he's all for it, and give the guns to the kids and let them play. I mean, it's just bullshit. I don't see any need to make the extent of the harm grandiose. All I need is 1 victim, and force me to look in its eyes and say, I'm going to torture you for our song and dance. Well, then we're done. I'm done. Tell me that I have to torture something to live, and I'm telling you I'm not going to play. I'm not doing it. One thing that's going to be a victim. 1 animal is going to die on the side of the road alone and cold. There should be concern. There should be some part of you that says, well, that's maybe more important, than me making cookies. Yeah. But that's the tragedy of this circumstance, is that most people are just too ignorant to appreciate how violent their existence is. And the other part to that is that ignorance belligerent? Is it just pretense and a very harsh duplicity that they can get away with it because everybody else is cheating, so they can get away with being a cheater? So they're all pretending, that they don't know any better, and they all know better. All right, so that's enough for that video. So I guess I'll try to get through the other one too. So get it all done at once. I don't have to revisit this ever again, hopefully. Just keep making the good arguments as I see them, and I won't be bothered worrying about what other people find as trivial flaws in those brilliant arguments. Alright, should be back. So the second video, roller coaster, was the initial analogy being, I don't know, whatever, dist. Put a kid on it. It's just insanely silly. Yeah, so it's one thing for some idiot to, want to ride something that could kill them. Another thing to do it to a kid. So again, this is just about what is acceptable in terms of, in a sense, I would call it kind of child abuse, that a lot of things people do to their kids would be I would certainly categorize it as child abuse. Growing up with some kind of mentality of, being an adventurer and all this other stuff, just creates a bunch of collateral damage. Having them pursue the gold medal. Well, it just seems like it's supposed to be a happy place. It's supposed to be some, fun thing, and they haven't considered the fact that it doesn't work.
You love this shitty roller coaster and long to ride it. Even though doing so may result in some injury to you, that is a risk you are willing to take.
So this, like I said, isn't really part of my use of the analogy. My use of it is to... so I usually use the illustration of you're going to Disneyland and you're going to basically inconvenience somebody substantially. You know they're going to be... You have a crystal ball and you can see that they're going to have a horrible time. Very sick, very ill. Yeah. Just going to be a terrible day. And so... knowing that, would you still drag them along? Or would you just say, I don't need to go to Disneyland. I can find something else to do. And to me, that's the better argument, but whatever. Jump ahead. Oh, and say, okay, let's let the assholes be assholes. It's another thing to say, okay, we're just going to say it's okay to abuse children. Yeah, so that's really what it's about, right? I mean, look, technically, I can't see it any other way, right? I mean, if you have a kid, and, you know, even though I'm a male and a guy and all that kind of crap, when you see those little kids with the giant football helmets on and all the bullshit, and you're saying, who the fuck does that? That's just asking for trouble. So why ask for it? But again, this is just me, and describing what I see as just a cruelty and a glibness that exists in most people. That, yeah, I am obviously not that kind of person. So for me, I see when there's a disaster waiting to happen, and other people don't. It's just really disturbing. Remember the place, I used to clean pools. And this one kid was a real, all that snowboarding stuff, real, do all this exports kind of stuff. And on the diving board, he tried to do some ridiculous trick, and he just missed. His head just missed. It just brushed his hair, kind of thing. And for what? A fucking trick. I mean, it's just so stupid. The risk. To be a billionaire, it means they have to create a lot of penny heirs. Yeah, yeah. So even if your kid gets to some point of success, you just almost argue, well, that's always going to be a road that's not going to be a very clean one. Okay, so they're going to be dirty on the inside.
We ourselves had to lean on the ideas of infinite iteration and the eventual emergence of the O'Malley's child.
So yeah, we invented some bullshit stuff. Yeah, so now they're saying they're going to use their O'Malley's analogy, and that somehow defeats the roller coaster analogy. It's just so much better. Or I don't know. I don't think he likes that analogy altogether either. So the whole thing doesn't. It's impossible to understand what all this crap is about. What the fuck are you going on about? Make arguments. Don't make arguments about the arguments. Make an argument. Arguing about how to argue or what to argue. Fuck that.
The box may contain valuable jewelry. For all you know...
Oh, okay. So he has this box analogy where it might have a bomb in it or, happy, pile of money. So I just changed it to, $1 million or it explodes. And you have no idea which one it's going to do. Do you give it to somebody? Well, of course you don't give it to anybody unless you hate them. Give it to Adolf Hitler. But yeah, why even discuss it and blah blah blah? And yes, you open it if you're good and desperate. Well, then you open it because you got nothing to lose. So the whole thing doesn't make much sense. Qualification skill to drive a car than you have to make. So these are simple arguments. That's another really simple one. Is that you have to be qualified to do a lot of things. To be a doctor, even be a nurse, to be a lot of things. You have to be a practitioner, or you have to be a qualified technician, or you have to be something. And to make babies, no, fuck that. You don't have to pass any test at all. And obviously on its face, that's pretty ridiculous.
Secrets forever prevented. And
so this isn't a great analogy. I mean, frankly, I gave it 4 seconds thought and already figured out a bunch of problems. Okay, they're still going on in the box analogy thing. So whatever, you know. I mean, all of this for some, you know, really these papers were not seminal, if that's the word. They weren't opus. So they're going over his 20-year ago papers, which almost is like going over my arguments from 20 years ago, which probably weren't my best arguments. So not really much point in that. No problem. I just say imagine, and it happens.
World where pre-humans queue to be assigned a life and are disappointed if they are turned down. But why should we think that such a world exists?
Yeah, so this gets into, you know, this isn't that complicated. There are no Martians in purgatory. You're not going to go release the incarcerated Martians when you create Martians, and the same is true for people. When you make a person, you didn't rescue them from some horrible place. Again, that's part of the asymmetry argument. Nothing isn't bad. It isn't negative. It's nothing. You know, it's a difference between something being bad and something being nothing. Reality. So yes, that is what happens, and that's what's being debated: is whether the reality should be changed. Duh. Okay.
So if it is a dubious choice to pass on the box, then it is also a dubious choice to make babies.
I
Okay, so I don't even know how you analogize these two things, but it's fine. Yes, you're just making another analogy for it could all go horribly wrong. Are you equipped to clean it up? So are you willing to make a mess you can't clean up? And that would be another character issue for me. People of integrity don't make messes they can't clean up. They don't risk blowing up their neighbor's property or something with some experiment they're doing in their backyard. They're mindful of their obligations, you know, not to create collateral damage.
Increasing the number of future individuals if necessary. But this is not the only rational policy. It can be equally rational to concentrate on the interests and needs of those who already exist.
Okay, so you're saying it's equally rational to invest in Band-Aids as it is to invest in a cure for a disease. And I'd argue that, no, they're not equally rational. Truth is especially when the cure is attainable and is really simple, and, you know, extinction is very simple, very easy. You don't have to do anything hardly at all except for not having kids, which isn't much to give up, frankly. And it's a guaranteed outcome. So, I mean, it's not like it's pie in the sky. You know, it's pretty much a certainty, and so it's more rational to be focused on prevention. Prevention is hugely efficient. Band-Aids hugely inefficient. Treating the symptoms or curing the disease, the two choices. And obviously the future is huge. If you can, you know, prevent, you can save trillions.
Fitting the child cannot be a part of this defense of reproduction, since the child does not exist. Therefore,
so who cares about all these conversations about the non-existent future when we know there will be a future, and we know we can do something in that future? We will define it essentially by the choices we make, the decisions we make. And yes, they're all inevitable. We're all determined machines. We're all going to do our thing. I'm going to make these arguments. I'm going to try to convince people not to be assholes, blah, 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 blah. They're going to be belligerently obstinate jackasses, blah, 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 blah. You know, all that'll take place. The war will have to be fought, and there will be a winner and a loser, and all that crap's going to happen. And it's all inevitable in the sense that we can't change any of that. And the only thing that really happens here is that my bot makes some kind of statement, throws it in the air, and sometimes it lands and does actually change the other bot. And that's all that we're looking for, is to give people, create the impetus of a little bit of thought that disengages them from their current garbage perceptions. And such. No, sorry. Fell asleep. No, he didn't fall asleep. Finishing up. Sorry, I don't know what that is. Brain just... whatever that is. Wobble in the record. Good sense if you're an anti-natalist to say, let's still make morphine. Let's still. Okay, so yes, so understanding that exit is the reality. There's no reason we should go to the exit door as violently as possible. We should go there as gracefully as possible. So sure, let's try to not, poop in the swimming pool, and let's try not to be, assholes, and get ourselves to a nice, graceful, and civilized cleaning up of the mess. And the mess is the bugs. The problem with Earth is it's infested with sentient bugs. So we have to get rid of the neurons. They're the problem. And I could do one more a little bit. Can figure out why things are the way they are. I mean, I'm making these physics arguments that are so obvious. I won't go into that, but it's the same. There are analogies. I didn't realize that this would be so simple if there were actually smart people on Earth, and there's a lot fewer of them than I thought. There's people that have memorized gibberish, and so they can sound smart, but they're not really smart because they can't think. They can't do logic, and they're not honest, which is really scary. The dishonesty inside of people has just surprised the hell out of me. I just never thought it was, that 9 out of 10 people were just dishonest, scheming creeps. I thought it was like 5 out of 10, I didn't think that this, again, I've just been very disappointed to find out that smart people aren't intelligent. Okay. They don't have any of the character traits that should go with an education and being informed, which is some regard for the truth and how powerful it is. And they have no regard. They're just religious jihading fanatics, and surprising. But anyway, till the next time, and such and so forth and whatnot. Seems like more than enough video and whatnot, so that's what we'll call it. And progress to the next, whatever. Okay, so till the next time, and such and so forth and whatnot. Yeah, I think that's enough. Pretty sure.